Good morning, it's Brian here. It's the Art of Startup War. We are at Expert Dojo. I am here in the fridge. I'm here with Venkat, who is an entrepreneur and a company that we invested in very recently. And we invested in his company, CannonCyber, because we believe it is going to be the future of deep enterprise tech and cybersecurity. And we are so excited to talk about it because I want every other investor who's listening to the show to understand the diligence that we went through before we realized that this is going to be absolutely huge in the future. So Venkat, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian. Thank you.
So let's start by telling everybody what CannonCyber is.
CannonCyber is a cloud security compliance automation platform. And here is the problem, right? When we look at customers who have millions of events to deal with, and when they deal with a humongous load of events, they have to first figure out, what kind of events they are getting and how do they remediate it, right? So the industry has given a lot of products in the detection space and in the ways to fix it. But, the key question that the industry has to answer is, how do you even preempt such an incident from happening?
Right.
And that's where CannonCyber comes in. So CannonCyber is about what we call as Secure Compliance Automation Network, or SCAN, or CSCAN, which is Cybersecurity Automation Network, which is, how do we help customers to preempt these security events from happening instead of, facing the wrath of those events. And on an average, it's interesting, Brian, that on an average, a customer loses about $14 million per security event that breaches an organization's network.
That's incredible. Just take me through that in a second. So what's that based on? So first of all, I am imagining that with 5G, with how, you and I come from a time when everything used to be wired to each other, right? So it was very simple. And you could break into things, but you couldn't really break into things in the middle of the wire. You had to come in through the server, or you had to come in through some other very smart space. But we're in a whole new world today. Today, with the onset of 5G, there are no wires anymore. Like when was the last time you've connected your computer to anything other than power? Everything is wireless, which means that the increase in threats, right, as you call them events, which I find is a very classy way of calling them. I think of them as attacks, right? The amount of attacks that are just happening have got to be increasing exponentially to a level right now that, is it even possible for companies to defend themselves?
It's an interesting, point of view that where the industry is heading. Brian, we have discussed this before. The beauty of cybersecurity is that both the problem and solution are equally funded, isn't it? Right. So, as we look at it, right, we are, from the past decade, we have gotten into what we call as the industry 4.0. And, one of the main factors or driving factors of this revolution has been the rise of IoT devices, which is rapidly increasing in, be it household or industrial areas, right, that are constantly connected to the internet. And you spoke about 5G, which is, which makes it much more faster in terms of access, but at the same time, much more harder in terms of, identifying these, cyber criminals. So as the number of connected devices grows, so does the number of, potential cybersecurity events, that target such devices. Earlier, we used to talk about, cybersecurity and internet differently from connected devices. Now, with the IoT devices and the cloud getting connected, right, it makes it much harder for us to detect these events, because let's take an example of DDoS, which is, distributed denial of service. So, we have seen that DDoS attacks can be launched from one vulnerable device, and that device can be used as a bot or a launchpad to escalate and launch a volumetric attack. So that's where, the security hygiene becomes very important, and more regulations are brought in with security hygiene, that can be built ahead of time, right? How many times have we heard that a particular breach has happened because of a lack of upgrade to a particular asset, or vulnerabilities not being fixed with a particular port or a server, right? So security compliance is all about, you know for the CISOs to be able to put their arms around their organization and say that, hey, you know what, I know where my organization's perimeter is, and I know how to protect them. And that's exactly where CannonCyber comes into picture.
And those chief information officers must be terrified. It must be the worst job in the world because they are continually under attacks. And I love what you said at the start, where the two sides of cybersecurity are equally well funded. It doesn't, like,
Absolutely.
we put billions into protection, but there are tens of billions going into attack because there's an
That's
equal
right.
amount of money to be made from unicorns and from exploiting unicorns. So as a CISO, you're walking into work every single day not knowing what's going to attack you and not knowing how to defend yourself, and also knowing that your only job is the integrity of the information you have, which is the only thing that everybody is attacking. How well would you say the industry are doing in defending themselves right now?
Very important point that you brought up, Brian. If you look at the job of a CISO, right? Um, the cyber criminals get many chances, and they can wait and watch and time their attack. Wherein, as far as the organization's boundaries are concerned, the CISOs they just need one breach, to kind of breach their fences and impact their businesses. So it is. Believe it or not, this is one of the main topics of agenda or conversations happening in the boardrooms today,
Of
in
course.
terms of like how do they keep up with the ongoing attacks? And let's face it, right? I mean, even if you take the current pandemic as an example, right? Leaving aside, how it has upended our lives and environment. If you look at it, right, CISOs expect more and more breaches to happen, during this pandemic. And we have seen this in the health sector, like in my conversations with many of the CIOs with major hospital chains. And they, in fact, expect a certain level of sophistication to increase, in the coming number of years, and that makes it a real deal to see how can they kind of protect their fence, protect their perimeter upfront, rather than being sorry at a later time.
So for them, this is absolute maximum priority. Now, I do want to get to CannonCyber, and I want to get to the genesis of exactly why you created it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how the company has moved forward and the traction of the company, so that all other investors by the end of this podcast are going to be able to get a really good feel as to why we invested in you and in New York second. But bring me to your background first. Tell us a little bit more about you so we know who Venkat is.
Sure. So I've built cloud and security products in my more than 2 decades of experience. And I've worked for major enterprises in different sectors. And one of the key areas that I focused on is, building and shipping great products in the security space. And this started with my, journey with RSA. And at RSA, I was building, intelligent threat management products and incident response products. And and as we looked at the industry, the evolving industry, and especially in terms of risk and compliance and risk exposure of our customers, it became very apparent that before we actually sell them something to protect their boundaries, it is also important to educate and evangelize about the importance of having a hygiene factor, as part of their IT management. And way back, I was also part of RSA's acquisition of a company called Archer Technologies, which we incubated into RSA. And as we did that, this was the time way back in 2010 where we were seeing the advent of more and more workloads getting onto the cloud, right? And with cloud, the perimeter or the boundaries of organizations have expanded beyond the imagination of these IT managers or CIOs, right? And given the amount of third-party products that one gets integrated with, the number of partners that you get integrated with, it soon has become a nightmare in terms of managing everybody and having a consistent view of your security posture. And this actually gave me an idea to build a consistent security posture. And in 2013, we built a product called Secure Cloud One. And
But by the
this
way,
was
this is also a scary moment, right? Because you are a career IT professional building phenomenal architecture to help protect companies. And then and you are protected to all levels. Like you have probably the most protected job in America. But then you decide that you're going to go out on your own and start off a company. How did that feel? I mean, from a position of terror.
Um, I felt the pain of my customers. Like one of the things that I did as part of RSA building products. There was an ecosystem of our partners and our customers, including federal government. And as I spoke to each of these CIOs, like I could feel that inherent pain in them in terms of. Like I mentioned earlier, right, being able to put their arms around their boundaries of the organization and say that, okay, I know where I am. So there was this innate need that I felt with the customers where they could not have a single pane of glass kind of a view of their entire organization. And that's where I found that, this is a place where, it begs a new product, a new market category of a product, which can give them that consistent view. And that's how Secure Cloud One was born. And in fact, it's an interesting story that when we were exhibiting Secure Cloud One at the HIMSS conference in Florida, it caught the attention of one of the leading healthcare providers called Trizetto, and it ended up, getting acquired by Trizetto.
Which is a beautiful thing. That has to have been a nice day.
Absolutely, it was a logical progression and a perfect complement for each other in terms of how Secure Cloud One was addressing a key gap in the healthcare space, and Trizetto was the perfect complement for us as a next step in terms of taking this product to the next level. So
Beautiful.
absolutely,
So
yep.
then you were hooked, right? Then you're an addict. Now you're saying, you know what? I've built one great product. I've been acquired. Your investors, did you have investors in that product?
No, we were bootstrapped all along.
Oh, I'm sorry to all investors listening. You missed out on his first one, but don't feel too terrible. So did I. But you're going to get in on the next one that came. So, okay, so what happened next?
So spent 3 years building a Secure Cloud One as part of the Trizetto's ecosystem, and there came a time where. Just to step back, if you look at compliances, Brian, in general, right? Compliance is seen as a necessary evil, right? Something that happens once a quarter or once a year for customers to bring in a third-party audit firm and say that, okay, you are compliant for PCI, you're compliant for HIPAA, compliant for GDPR and whatnot. But the changing cybersecurity landscape has mandated some of these compliances to kind of be there and be seen, right, at the time of inspection, right, at the time of looking at your organizational boundary. And this happened with the three of our large customers here in the provider space, healthcare provider space, who basically said that, guys, like if you are not compliant for a specific specific compliance, regulatory compliance at a given point in time, we are not going to bring you on board.
Wow.
So this was where a check was withheld for my company. And I kind of felt that, hey, you know what, this is something that is like rapidly changing. Gone are the days where we spoke about just compliance. Now it is about continuous security compliance, right? And I spoke with more than 80 of my customers, and not just in the healthcare space. I wanted to validate whether this is something seen in the other and the adjacent industries as well. And lo and behold, right? I mean, I hear the same thing from each and every of these customers, be it in the financial sector, be it in the retail sector, where there are an emerging needs of security which is baked into compliances, and an organization needs to be continuously compliant for whatever they are being monitored for. And the lack of it, right? I mean, let's look at the like the flip side of it. The lack of a compliance results in penalties, business liabilities, and the breach. I mean, needless to talk about the Capital One breach that we saw recently, which could have been prevented
Incredible.
if only CannonCyber was there in as part of Capital One's
Incredible.
infrastructure.
And this is something which is not getting less. This is something which is getting more because the
Correct.
level of compliances that are required. It used to be simple 30 years ago. If you were healthcare, yes, you needed to have compliance. Outside healthcare, companies like to talk about compliance, but nobody really checked anything. And the things they did check were a small amount. We're in a whole different world now. Every level of compliance is at such a heightened level because they can be checked remotely. It's not so much now about having to come in and sending, 10 guys in with black suits and black ties who are going to come in and do an audit of your systems. Now all of these audits can be done remotely, and the
Correct.
fines, we're not talking thousands of dollars. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. We're not even talking millions. We are talking,
Absolutely.
like, I don't even want to say billions, but there are some companies that can be fined hundreds of millions of dollars plus for
Right.
poor compliance. Actually, I'm going to go a step further. There are companies out there who have budgeted up to 1 to 2% of their entire revenue to fines, which they know they will get because it's impossible for them in their mind to be able to meet compliance standards. Can you imagine?
Absolutely. You said it, Brian. This is a space where is getting a lot of exposure because of what we are seeing out there in the industry, and I know that begs for a partner who can help them mitigate that and mitigate that on a continuous basis, right? It's not a one-time thing, because it's not about taking care of the instant that you had on hand. It's about being prepared for this next one. So it is also about the security readiness. It is the ability of having the organization get ready for the next event, because guess what, it's going to happen.
Okay, so look, all investors listening have come to a logical conclusion. They're saying, Venkat, Brian, we get it. You do not need to convince us that this is $1 billion opportunity. We get it. We hear it. We see it with the companies we've invested in already. We know it exists now. And we also know you're brilliant because we know that you've exited before and that we know that you've worked with some of the titans within this space. Now, you gotta tell us, what did you invent? And how do we know it works? That's all they're thinking, because this next segment is everything. I know, which is why I'm sitting here very happy and very gleeful in my little podcast studio saying we are going to do great. We are going to fire on all cylinders with you. We're going to put you in front of the top VCs in the world, and we're going to make sure everybody knows what you're capable of doing. So this time around, you don't get acquired. This time around, you take it all the way to unicorn. But explain a little bit for the rest of the listeners what you created, how you did it, and what percentage of that problem it will fix.
Sure. So the product is CScan, as I mentioned earlier. It is cybersecurity compliance automation network, and what CScan does is it gives customers the ability to be able to monitor their infrastructure, what we call as workload, irrespective of whether it's on-premise, hybrid, or cloud, and make sure that they are able to mitigate their zero-day attacks as well as known signatures without the manual intervention of their security analysts. Why is this important? We discussed this earlier, Brian. So the number of events or security attacks happening on a daily basis is increasing tenfold. So in 5 years from now, if an average retail organization is seeing about 50,000 incidents per day, they're going to see 10 times, in 5 years from now, which is humanly impossible for manual workload or intervention to happen by security analysts. That's where CScan comes into picture. The beauty of CScan is, we have built it with a modular microservices based architecture. I'm not going to go into the technical part of it, but it basically gives the leverage or the ability for customers to deploy this on their infrastructure, or it can be as nimble as being deployed into a product and ensure that the given product is able to look for compliance anomalies for the customers. And we started this company in 2018, October of 2018, and it's a bootstrapped company again. And we were able to find early anchor customers for this product, and we successfully deployed this for one of the products, which is a hybrid cloud infrastructure product, which got acquired by Google. I'm not going to name it. You can look it up. In October of last year, and it's part of their cloud portfolio in Google. And apart from that, like I mentioned, right, the beauty of the CannonCyber's CScan product is it is as nimble as being able to be deployed into another product. We are working with a leading GPU vendor based out of the Bay Area, with whom we are helping them push more of their devices to the FedRAMP, one of the FedRAMP contractors, and CScan is going to be an essential part of this GPU device, wherein it looks for continuous monitoring and ensure that there are no anomalies as far as the GPU box is concerned, when it gets connected to the federal network.
Right. And what are your limitations right now? Because you have a product, you have it in market, you have proven customer satisfaction. I'm guessing the only problem is you, right? Because you can't replicate you on every single sales call. So you need to build a bigger team. So talk to us a little bit about the team, what you're going to build, and how you're going to build it.
Sure. So we have a fantastic team, a small team, albeit, who come from, cybersecurity background. Many of them have been practitioners, working with the likes of NTT Security and Microsoft and others. And a small team based out of the Bay Area here. And like you rightly pointed out, our plan is to raise our seed round and build the product in completion, and also kind of move on to a Series A in about a year's time. And one other area that we have focused on is incremental POC or product development, right? We have use cases based product development. So what that means is whatever we have right now is good for deployment for customers. So we want to build several use cases. For example, right? We talk about privacy, we talk about CCPA. CCPA went live in June of this year. And, CCPA brings with it, its own challenges in terms of how to look for privacy readiness for customers, right? So we want to build compliances based on what we see as market needs and expand into a global footprint. Right now, we are focused just in North America. But believe me, Brian, there are a lot of inquiries that we are already getting from Middle East and from Europe in terms of making organizations ready for these security compliances in their respective markets.
Everything, GDPR, everything. They're getting murdered by it. Like everybody needs it. And then how do you see the revenue growth? I mean, because the beautiful thing is it's a monthly recurring revenue in many cases, which investors love. So how do you see the growth and over the next while? So let's say we raise a seed, we bring in a couple of $1 million, right? We'll
Yeah.
get it
Yeah.
led
We
by
are
one.
looking for 2.5 million. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll bring in a nice lead VC, somebody in the cybersecurity space who loves this, of which we have a bunch of contacts. And then we'll lead on. Maybe we'll give a few angels an opportunity to come in as well afterwards. So all of you angels listening, we like to give you a chance to be part of the cap table, especially at this exciting stage. But how will the revenue grow based on that 2.5 coming through?
Sure. So here's the exciting part of it, right? Um, the the market that we are in, the new market category that we have created, right? We see like tremendous need for this product with our
Mm-hmm.
customers, and in the next 2 years, we plan to hit close to $5 million revenue run rate, and in the next 5 years, with the help of you, Brian, and other investors, we plan to take it to 100 million. You heard me right. It is 100 million. That's where we are targeting. And the reason is this, right? Like I mentioned, if you look at the incident response security market, we first started with detection. Then we ended up with remediation or response. Now is the time for continuous security compliance. It's a new market category, and that's something that every customer is going to need,
Yeah.
because they have to fortify their fences upfront, instead of being sorry at a later time. This is a playbook that we have been able to put in front of significant number of customers in different industry verticals, and we have a go from them in terms of deployment.
Do you feel like every single moment of your life has led to this point?
Absolutely, I think it is a culmination, and it's about you know the fortune of having seen this market for a very long time, right? Especially the threat intelligence and threat response market, and it is definitely a culmination of what I've seen in the past, and where I think we are heading, and something that the customers acknowledge.
For me, I couldn't be happier that we put the investment in. I am so desperately looking forward to expanding this out and putting you in front of all of the VCs, closing the round, helping you grow. Actually, it's funny, when you said $10 million a month in recurring revenue, I didn't even flinch because I don't doubt it for a second. I believe that cybersecurity over the next 5 to 10 years, compliance, cybersecurity, attacks, breaches is going to be the most important industry of all industries. Nothing will
Yep.
become as important as this because we have just left our door open. People talk about China. It's not China. It's like half of these guys are in Poland, in Warsaw, in Dublin, in like Liverpool, in England. It's like it's
That's right.
some guy and girl you'll never see, and three-quarters of them are just playing. They're just going to destroy
Correct.
the world because it's fun.
Yep.
So this area, this space that you're in is so enormous. What you're actually doing is so important for companies because all of these people building up good, strong companies, which comes from their sweat and tears, being destroyed from folks outside, I'm not a really big fan of. And at the same time, the compliance the compliance standards that are being set on companies, in many ways, I feel for the consumer, but I also feel for the companies that have to do it. So you are reaching what is known in the business as a perfect storm. And there was actually a great TEDx talk, which was done by a guy called Bill Gross, who's a
Hmm.
legendary investor down here in Los Angeles from Idea Labs. And Bill did this thing, and he studied all of his startups, and he studied who raised the most amount of money, who was the most inspirational entrepreneur, where they were on communication, what they did with regards to revenue generation. And the one specific thing that defined those great unicorns that grew to phenomenal heights was timing.
Hmm.
And everything. It's like the timing of the industry has reached this point of this crescendo where over the next 5 or 10 years, what you've built is going to be massively necessary. You have built your resume from a level of company after company, building up skill set after skill set. And then you did the first company and you're like, you know what? I built greatness. I got acquired, but I could have taken it another 50, 100, $200 million, maybe $2 billion. This one here, This is my big one. Whatever comes before this and after this, everything led to this point. So I want to leave it there. I want to say any investors that are looking to connect with you, how should they connect?
I'm accessible,
Do we
or
just do
phone,
email?
email is fine. Yep, absolutely. You have my email, Brian, and you have my, contact numbers.
Okay, so anybody who's looking to connect directly with me, Brian at expertdojo.com, and I'll pass over the details. Website, let's give everybody the website so they can check it out.
It's www.CannonCyber.com, all one word, and with a double N, CANNON, cyber.com.
So nice and easy to remember. And you heard it here. $10 million a month in recurring revenue, a unicorn in the making, one of the biggest problems that has been faced by not just large enterprises, but also small and medium-sized enterprises today. And the solution is right here in front of you. Connect with me if you'd like to get involved with investment, or if you want to be a partner, or if you want to be a company that's going to be a client in the future. All of you are welcome. Venkat, thanks for being a part of my journey. I appreciate you. I hope that in a few years' time you will look back on us and see the value that we bring and say the same thing back to us, and we're going to go to an incredible place.
For sure. Thank you very much, Brian. Thanks for being part of our journey as well.
And that's a wrap.